Is AOC sold out? And is the progressive movement dead? Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America. Well, internet's been buzzing. There I was on the Middle America page. If you want to join Middle America, it's very simple. Facebook.com/America Middle. Make a little request. We will invite you in and you will be there. You'll be able to contact me, contact the great Isabel Jimenez, etc., etc. Obviously, the great Matthew Maeda and all the crew over there at Middle America. But I saw a post from the big homie Isabel Jimenez that said, "I am through with AOC." I think that's what she said. Or she said, AOC is dead to me, I think is actually what she said. AOC is dead to me, she said. And I was like, wow, that's a pretty heavy thing to say. And obviously this is in regard to the Politico report that came out a couple days ago that chronicles the fact that AOC has had an ideological and practical break with Bernie Sanders, which caps off the most recent election season in which she did not support the slew of Justice Democrats or progressive that basically got slaughtered in this last go-around. They got annihilated, and Politico seems to be blaming AOC for the destruction of the progressive movement in the last go-around. Here's an excerpt of the half-dozen incumbent primary challengers Justice Democrats is backing this cycle. Ocasio-Cortez has endorsed just two. Neither was a particularly risky move. Both candidates, Jessica Cisneros in Texas and Marie Newman in Illinois, were taking on conservative Democrats who oppose abortion rights and later earned the support of several prominent national Democrats. So the whole idea of the Justice Democrats was a debate within the progressive movement that said you had extremists like Jimmy Dore that were saying we need to get out of this party as a whole, start a new party, and then take on the DNC before we go after the Republicans. And the more logical, rational heads, Kyle Kulinski, Cenk, etc., prevailed that said no, we need to go from within and destroy them from within and run them out of town, as Cenk said. You'll see a clip of that very soon. I'm sure you guys want to. You need some Cenk Uygur in your life. So that was the idea. And, this was a kind of a promising thing, right? 2018, saw the formulation of the squad. You had Rashida Tlaib, you had Ayanna Pressley, you had Ilhan Omar, and then, of course, you had Ocasio-Cortez. And so it seemed extremely promising. And then we saw what happened in 2020. And so she was pretty mum on the support for Justice Democrats. And obviously the most glaring one was the fact that she didn't even consider supporting Cenk Uygur. And you know that he reached out to her and she was basically mum on supporting Cenk, who, for all intents and purposes, whatever you think about him, he absolutely was instrumental, and TYT was absolutely instrumental in platforming AOC, getting her name recognition, and making her the face of progressivism. I mean, she was perfect. Woman of color, but not too colorful. Very, very intelligent. Very intelligent. I'll say this about her intelligence. She is very strong in what she's uncommonly strong in what she's strong is. I know it's very stylish to say that she's stupid and she's an idiot. Go ahead and run for public office and then tell me how stupid she is. She's an intelligent young woman, marginally attractive, etc., etc. But the fact of the matter is that she was platformed by TYT, and obviously a lot of progressives saw that as a betrayal. And of course you had the comical incident in which Bernie endorsed Cenk and then summarily retracted it hours later, which honestly is the entire reason we're in the mess we're in. I'll talk about that later. So on the one hand, one of the massive strikes against her is that she didn't endorse the Justice Democrats. She didn't follow along with the template. And the second issue is that she released two of the more radical elements from her staff and then hired more conventional Democrats, folks who were working for Kamala Harris, etc., which, again, these are the symbology there is unmistakable. These are agents of the establishment that she was anointed to destroy. You know, there's that whole little scene in Star Wars.
You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy this Sith, not join them!
Yeah. So there's that, and on top of that, in the most, you know, stomach-turning part yet, where she called Nancy Pelosi the mama bear of the Democratic Party. And then that was the end of that. So now, Jimmy Dore, who I respect very highly and who has essentially been right this entire time, yesterday put out a scathing rebuke of her. TYT put in a not-so-scathing rebuke. The Hill, all the progressives are turning on AOC now and basically calling her a sellout. I was in the Jimmy Dore chat yesterday, and they were talking about how, they were like, I wonder how much money she was given. Look, I don't think that the only time that a politician does something you disagree with, that you can always say that they were bribed out of their convictions. I think what happened with AOC is actually a lot more complex than that. I think what happened with AOC was a number of things, okay? So here are the top reasons why AOC has sold out and why I don't blame her for it. Reason number one, AOC is not the head, ultimately, of the progressive movement. The head of the progressive movement is Bernard Sanders. He is the overlord. He's the guy. He's the one that's talking about a political revolution. That's him. And the fact of the matter is Sanders is too weak to lead a revolution. Now look, whenever you talk about revolution, I mean, historically speaking, that's a very provocative term. And there has never been a bloodless revolution, ever. But what do you have with Bernie Sanders? You got a guy, and obviously when I say no revolution has ever been bloodless, I'm not saying literally, I'm talking about on the political stage. You have a guy in Bernie Sanders who refused to be a revolutionary, all the while using the language of a revolutionary. He, as far back as 2016, went around and endorsed Hillary, and in his endorsement of Hillary, she still blames him, along with James Comey and the Russians, for her loss. And to this moment, she's still horribly bitter about that fact. And Bernie did not learn the lesson. Even now, you've got Bernie talking about Joe Biden, who is literally the epitome, the metaphorical epitome of everything that Bernie preaches against. Corruption in the political sphere, all the stuff with Burisma and his son. He never called it out. He never went on the attack on Biden. He says that Biden's a good guy, a good friend, and somebody who could beat Trump. Well, if you're AOC, and that is the guy that's got all the cachet, and that's the guy that's leading your movement, then you're dead in the water. Because you can't be a foot soldier when your general is sending pillows and king-size beds to the enemy. And that's what Bernie Sanders does. So for all the people that are saying that AOC sold out, here's the blaze. Problem surfaced after a January 25th rally in which Ocasio-Cortez gave an entire speech on Sanders' behalf without mentioning his name. Now watch this. She also encouraged people to work against immigration authorities on behalf of illegal immigrants. The Huffington Post reported that Sanders' campaign manager, Faiz Shakir, told Ocasio-Cortez he didn't like her advocating for open non-cooperation with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, that's called ICE, although Shakir has denied such communication. Okay? So here's what happened. She's saying, don't go along with ICE. Do not help them. Run interference, whatever. And the Bernie campaign said, no, we're not trying to go there. So you can't say that AOC completely sold out. In this situation, AOC out-lefted Bernie. I mean, remember, Bernie was saying we need a moratorium on immigration, and he has also talked about shutting down ICE and all the rest of it. And so she's saying, okay, well, let's do that in the practical real world. These are practical real world steps we can take before we get into power and disband ICE. And then they come along and say, well, we don't really mean to do something actually revolutionary. You see? So you've got to be fair to AOC. She came in there naive and bright-eyed and wide-eyed about Bernie, and he was going to be the one to lead the revolution. But she's seeing that her leader is essentially a coward and a man who cannot put to action the words that he speaks. So she then is left on an island alone. Look, she's got a bunch of Twitter followers, but I'm sure she's intrepid enough to realize that she does not have enough cachet to do this by herself. She was supposed to be a good number two. You know, people were saying that if Bernie's Moses, AOC is Joshua. Joshua was the guy that took on the promised land after Moses. The issue is that Moses was willing to actually do stuff. Moses confronted Pharaoh to his face a bunch of times. Moses put in work against the slave driver. He actually actioned things. Moses actually had to be calmed down and brought more to the middle because Moses was way too far left, even for God sometimes. So that's the problem. If you're AOC, she's put in an impossible situation. She's left on an island. She knows she's not ready to lead the entire movement, and because of that, she's had to scale it back. That's number one. Number two, the impact. Number two is related to number one, but more so on the establishment side. Number two, the impact of the 2020 presidential primaries on the Democratic side. The fact that the Democratic Party was able to coalesce around an empty suit like Joe Biden said a lot without saying anything. What it ultimately said was, hey, AOC, we are willing to lose another 4 years of the presidency, which would include almost certainly another Supreme Court pick. These are the lengths that we are willing to go. We are willing to cut off our own nose to spite our face. We're willing to cut off eyes, nose, ears, everything to spite our face. And we will coalesce around the absolute worst candidate. We have found the one Homo sapien of the 8 billion human beings on the planet who is a worse candidate than Hillary Clinton, and watch what we do. Watch how we coalesce around him. Watch how we sacrifice the political careers of other promising people, Buttigieg, whatever. Those are the lengths we're willing to go, and that's the power we have in the media, and that's the unlimited resources and funds we have versus just you. Because your man Bernie is not going to do anything. That's how far we're willing to go. And if we can do this to Bernie, what do you think we can do to you? Because you're influential, no doubt, but you're no Bernie Sanders, and we just washed him. So they came to her and they said, look, now this is all speculative, but I mean, this is where I land. I think Obama, Pelosi, all those folks took her aside and said, listen, sweetheart, you've got ideologies, and so do we. I had ideologies going in, but now you see the real world. It's very, very difficult to get this stuff done. And if you want 5% of the America that you envision, then you got to play ball with us. But if you're going to do this whole, you got to play ball with us. But if you're going to do this whole, I'm a radical Justice Democrat, yada, yada, yada stuff, we're going to crush you. We're going to eliminate you, and nothing that you care about is ever going to get passed. You know, it's the reason why Jimmy Dore was a perfect example of this. Is Jimmy Dore. She gave this brilliant speech about the bailouts, right, that are happening with this latest stimulus package and all the rest of it. We all know how horrible it is, and then they criticize her for voting for it. Well, if she doesn't vote for it, she knows the ramifications. The ramifications are as follows. She knows it's going to get passed anyway, and that the media, the left-wing and the right-wing media, by the way, are going to spin this as radical leftist stops money from coming into the hands of average Americans. And so she's alone in the wilderness, she has to compromise in order to get anything done. And so she saw what happened with Bernie, and so she bent the knee. I don't know what else to tell you. Here's the third reason she sold out. You guys remember what happened in the 2016 elections with Cenk? Do you remember the epic meltdown? I sent the meltdown to my brother because he hadn't seen it yet. Meltdown video. But do you remember, dear listener, this specific moment?
And I'm done with the losers. And I'm done with those donors. I don't give a fuck what the donors want. Okay? So the DNC, you think we're coming for you? You're goddamn right we're coming for you. We're going to pulverize the DNC. We're going to rip it to shreds. Yes, we are at war now.
So, Mr. Uygur declared jihad on the DNC. Now look, in 2016, he was probably looked upon as just a whining, petulant child. But then, in 2018, when Rashida Tlaib wins, Ilhan wins, Presley wins, AOC wins, they got the attention of the Democratic establishment. Look, ladies and gentlemen, the United States has taken part in coups, multiple coups. The most recent one would be a set of coups in the Arab Spring. And you know, there's a template of how you do these things. You send in CIA assets, you look at the lay of the land, you look at how many people are actually willing to pick up a Kalashnikov and go to war against their own government. And once those teams have assessed and feel comfortable that they can get a sizable force to do so, in comes the Green Berets to train these militia and lead them into battle. And afterwards, when they're trained and they've done a couple operations, the government figures out too late, if things go well, that there is a coup happening and a revolution, and by that time it is too late. See Egypt, see Libya as the most prescient example. That's why, by the way, it didn't work with Syria, because the dominoes had already been falling, and so Assad was able to get in front of the CIA-backed militia over there in Syria, and etc. Here's my point. If you're going to overthrow a powerful regime with a ragtag group of grassroots followers, you do not announce your declaration of war at the beginning. Well, the most intelligent thing to do is to do it quietly, behind the scenes, surreptitiously, and then by the time you reveal it is too late for the people to respond well to you. Well, Cenk declared absolute war on the DNC. He used language like burn it down, burn it to ashes, yada, 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 which, by the way, Buttigieg picked up and was constantly accusing Bernie of trying to burn down the party. You saw those memes about the Joker attributing that to Bernie. Bernie never said anything about burning down the party. That was Cenk. And no matter how you feel about the Young Turks, they've got over 1 billion views. They're a very, very influential bloc. So I don't think that the DNC establishment took what he said in 2016 very seriously, but after 2018, they absolutely took it seriously, and they made it their goal not really to destroy Trump. Remember, 2016 to 2018, they had the Russia stuff happening, Comey, Miller, yada, yada, yada. Then right before the 2018 elections, you had the migrant caravan and yada, yada. The Democratic Party was not thinking about Justice Democrats or Cenk's ridiculous statement about how he's going to burn down the party. But after 2018, when they saw the screws that they had in place of their power loosening on the DNC side, they trained their guns on progressives, and they won. And so that's the third reason, is that the Justice Democrats, led by Cenk, the progressives, overestimated their capabilities and underestimated the capabilities of the establishment. The establishment, especially on the Democratic side, has proven to be more tyrannical and autocratic than on the Republican side. Please remember that there was a Never Trump campaign led by top Republicans. But when Republican people said, no, we want that guy, they bent the knee. They said, okay, I think this guy is crazy, but this is what the people want. That's what they're going to get. The Democrats did not do that with Bernie in 2016, and we saw what happened in 2020. So it's for those three reasons that the progressive movement is essentially dead. It's dead in the water. There was nobody else that's going to lead the party to a progressive leftist agenda other than AOC and Bernie. And Bernie refused to leverage any of his political power to enforce the policies that he talked about. And he's too busy wanting to be liked by the establishment, so he wouldn't attack Biden. And now he's saved up all of these. Now Trump has got so many weapons in that rifle of his for when it's time to go up against Biden that I think it's going to be a horrific landslide. I also believe that this may also flip the House back to Republican control. And it really, really depends on what happens with this COVID-19 stuff. But look, I'm not necessarily a fan of AOC. I thought that the impeachment nonsense, I blamed mostly on her. She leveraged her Twitter power to basically pressure Pelosi into doing something that I thought was detrimental to the progressive agenda. And I thought it was indicative of the fact that AOC did not recognize who the true enemy was to progressivism. The true enemy to progressivism is not Donald Trump. The true enemy to progressivism is Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, and that entire establishment. And so I thought that was a mistake on her part. Now she's alone in the wilderness, and she realizes that in order for any of the things that she cares about to get passed, she's got to play ball with those people. Not a good situation for her to be in. I really don't know any other play for her. And it's like I say, it's like I say to my kids all the time, like, you'll understand when you're a parent, or, when you're running a small business, you make certain decisions that the people that work for you have all types of opinions on. And so it's easy for us to armchair quarterback and tell her what she should have done and how she should have stood on her principles. But again, I'm sounding like a broken record here, and it pains me to say this, but the vast majority of the blame for this, once again, has to fall on Bernie Sanders. He essentially is the one who abandoned the movement. He did. And now she is left picking up the pieces when the real straw that broke the camel's back, he wouldn't be consistent with his rhetoric as far as the ICE stuff goes. So there you are. That's my take on it. Sorry, Izzy, but I think you should be a little bit more gracious to Sister AOC, because I don't know what else you wanted her to do in this situation. She's one woman going up against the most powerful apparatus between the media industrial complex of the DNC and how they triangulate with MSNBC and CNN. I don't know how in the world you expect her to do that by herself. And make no mistake about it, even though Bernie's out there as a figurehead, she is by herself. He's proven that on a multitude of occasions. Love your neighbor. Take care of each other. Middle America, we are the media. Till next time, guys.